We are the restaurant brokers, and we sell restaurants.
We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm over a decade ago.
Atlanta, Georgia was our starting point, but our brand is spreading nationwide. We define restaurant brokerage and help buyers just like these.
Our dream, our goal, open up a restaurant, loving life, serving people breakfast and lunch, and then enjoying the rest of the day with them and ourselves.
Buying an existing restaurant, leasing a closed restaurant space, or purchasing a restaurant franchise. We help buyers satisfy their appetite for acquisition.
I'm part of a husband and wife team with this fella.
Working with my wife has been a lot of fun. The ultimate goal for everybody here is to make this work. And because we have different strengths, we bring different angles to the deal.
The process begins with our powerhouse website, WeSellRestaurants.com, where buyers sign online confidentiality agreements and browse restaurants for sale.
Then we send buyers undercover to check out a restaurant and decide if it's the right one for them.
Buyers get our proprietary business analysis tool with all the financial details on the business for sale.
After studying the restaurant inside and out, it's back to our office.
We're deal makers. We write contracts and negotiate terms for buyers and sellers. That's why we sell more restaurants than any other firm in the nation. We are the restaurant brokers. Our name says it all. I'm Robin Gagnon.
And I'm Eric Gagnon, and we sell restaurants. We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm, We Sell Restaurants, over a decade ago. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com.
We're also on your radio once a week with the leading authorities in the restaurant business, talking about subjects trending in the restaurant industry. Tweet your questions while we're on the air to our Twitter handle. We're at Sell Restaurants. Post to our Facebook page, facebook.com/WeSellRestaurants. If we don't get to your questions, we will definitely follow up on our social media channels.
Our goal is to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. If you have some ideas or comments about the show, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email. My email is Eric, E-R-I-C, @WeSellRestaurants.com.
Bottoms up, guys. Today, the restaurant brokers are getting the scoop on what's on tap in the world of beer. A drink with a rich legacy is getting a lot of attention from customers, social media, and marketers alike. How are local breweries, craft breweries, and flavor profiles changing the traditional marketplace? Join us as we interview the experts in the beer industry.
And our first guest today is Ryan Macina. Ryan grew up in the Tampa, Clearwater, Florida area. He worked in the hospitality industry, restaurant and bars to get himself through college. Being in the right place at the right time, he was introduced to the owners of World of Beers and became their very first employee back in 2007. When he's not working, you'll find him on his mountain bike, blazing some new trails. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, now our next guest, I may just slaughter his last name, but I'm going to give it a go. It's Zach Schroerluck, an Atlanta native who's held quite a few positions at Sweetwater over the last 7 years. He started as a parking guy in college, worked his way into giving tours, became the bar and events manager, and now runs field marketing in Atlanta and Athens, as well as assisting with many other departments throughout the brewery. Community outreach is his favorite part of what he does. He connects with the community, especially through environmental organizations like the Georgia Conservancy or Waterkeeper Alliance. He says he has a dream job. Zach, is that the case?
That is the case, and you did a really good job on my last name. That was pretty close. It's Schroerluck, but that was close. There's some silent R's and things going on in there, but long German last name.
All right, great.
Rule for the rest of the show, we'll call you Zach, period.
Deal.
And not last but least, we also have, to complete our panel today, Erica Reeds. Erica is the founder and editor of Draft Magazine. She started her career in journalism as a senior editor in the financial sector and as an editor of a luxury lifestyle magazine. In 2006, at the age of 26, Erica launched Draft Magazine with the intention of speaking to a newly emerging craft beer audience with an eye towards lifestyle or life on tap. Draft taps into the freshest flavors, unique experiences, and emerging trends in beer, plus food, travel, and leisure for a 360-degree view of the modern drinker's lifestyle. Erica grew up in Owatonna, Minnesota, and attended the University of Virginia. She lives now in Scottsdale, Arizona, with her husband, a neurosurgeon. Erica, welcome to the show today.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Okay, so we really have got a great panel, and I just want to kick it off by just asking kind of in general, what is going on with the beer industry. Zach, you want to weigh in first, and then we're going to get Erica to give us the scoop from her perspective.
Sure. I'd say the best word to describe the beer industry right now is changing. I think craft beer is an exciting, I want to say not new trend, but newer trend. The industry as a whole is growing. I think as people's palates are changing, people are everyone's becoming a foodie, no matter who you are. So you're wanting better food, better quality food, more interesting food. And I think that coincides directly with beer. And as the food scene is growing and changing, I think the beer scene is growing and changing.
I love that answer. Eric, what do you think?
I completely agree. I mean, what isn't going on in the beer industry is, I think, the better question. I mean, growth is definitely happening in all aspects of it, from the how many breweries are opening to how much production of beer is happening, but also, I mean, from a consumer perspective, the availability of flavor is unbelievable, from brewers really playing with different hop varieties, to, playing with spices and other kind of food ingredients, and also resurrecting really classic styles. And so for the consumer, it's just it's a wonderful time to be playing and trying and experimenting with beer.
So, Ryan, you're on the other side because you're on the retail side of the marketplace. What's your perspective?
I am, and fortunately for me, I'm very unbiased to, number one, any product for that matter in the craft beer world. I agree with both Zach and Erica on those topics. It is ever-changing, and I can tell you that world of beer has evolved with that craft beer market to include food after the first 7 years of not having food. So food is definitely taking a large part in, not only the pairings, but the style changes, and the market is evolving, which is nice. It's ever changing.
Right.
That's interesting. Now, Zach, I want to go back to you because I know we've been in Atlanta a long time as our company's headquartered here as well, and I remember your brewery when you could go on Thursday night and just take a tour from the back door of the shipping areas and have a good time. So you've been around a long time. I think you've been around for 18 years. So you guys saw that trend way before you guys got here before it was cool to be in the craft brewery business. Yeah,
on this side of the country for sure. Our owner, Freddie Bench, he came from Colorado, actually, and the beer scene in Colorado was exploding, 20, 25 years ago. It was what he was used to. He was used to big, hoppy, we joke around, heady beers that we all love to drink. He found himself in Atlanta for the 96 Olympics, looked around and recognized, as a desert for craft beer, saw a great opportunity, started Sweetwater in February of 1997. Brewed up a few beers, few test batches. 420 ended up being the third beer we actually ever made, and kind of put us on the map to start kind of competing with the bigger boys on the West Coast. And over time, barrel production and brewing production rose and rose. Our goal was to always stay as close to the community as possible. Without the people that drink our beer, we don't exist. So that's, again, back to what you were saying earlier, community outreach is key. And I think it's all been, the key to success for us has been, again, making good beer, being number one, but also reaching out and giving back to the folks that give to us.
Love that answer. So, Erica, I just want to ask you to weigh in a little bit. You are on the magazine side of the business, so you're capturing trends and seeing what's out there. Can you tell us a little bit about what's finding wide appeal now?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of your question.
Yeah, which styles of beer are finding the most wide appeal right now?
Oh, sure. I think that we can universally say that IPAs have definitely are having their moment, which of course are a hoppier style of beer, and with the elevated hop profile is sort of an interesting moment because there are so many different hop varieties out there now that are being used and ways of extracting the flavor from hops that some are still, classically very bitter, while others take on more of a juicier, citrusy, tangerine, all kinds of flavors that you're seeing in it, which I think is a really interesting thing. So it's a beer style that maybe 10 years ago was a little rough around the edges, but now has been finessed in some versions, and so it's definitely one to try because every one you try will be slightly different or vastly different. The other trends that we're definitely tracking right now are session beers, which are just lower alcohol versions of sort of other styles. You have session IPAs, which is also an interesting thing because I think that speaks to people's desire to have more than one. And, it's not necessarily about being intoxicated as much as it is enjoying the flavors of these beers and being able to enjoy more than one of the ones that you like.
Love that.
How about sour beers? I think those are like
sour beers.
That's the hot ticket right now. I think IPAs are definitely taking off, especially in the bigger markets. I think as you're crafty, beer nerd like myself, and like there's so many out there right now, sour beers and Gozas and Berliner Weisses. I think that's a style that's going to be like the next IPA, in my opinion.
Interesting.
I definitely agree with that. I think that those are, and they're fun because they also have a wine-like quality, and that sort of can appeal to a wine drinker as well. So there's something really fun to play with those.
Interesting. Now, Ryan, we heard IPA, sour beers, all kinds of beers. You guys are in the retail place. How do you pick what you're going to sell in your stores? Because there's so many beers, so little space. What do you do?
First of all, what we like to do is let's see what's in our backyard. We represent almost 30 breweries here in Atlanta for the Kennesaw location at least. And they're right. IPAs have withstood the test of time from West Coast to East Coast. And while it's not an American style of beer, we've adopted this as our own. But what does change is seasons, and with seasons change the beers and the flavor profiles. And yes, sours, Berliner Weisses, Gozas, easy drinking wit beers are on the rise, while IPAs still maintain to be in that top 5, at least for our portfolio. IPAs probably consist of 25% of what I carry at any given time as well.
So do you think the customer in general is a lot more sophisticated? Let me ask it this way. Are you training the customer to ask for more choices, or is that customer more sophisticated and he's driving the marketplace to create more innovation? And Zach, why don't you take...
Great
go ahead.
question. What we do at the World of Beer is we actually like to take not only the craft beer nerd, but we like to have the novice as well and actually introduce them to styles that they normally wouldn't have. And with the drafts at our disposal and sample glasses galore, we try to give them something off the beaten path to kind of open their eyes and bring them into the craft beer world that Erica, myself, Zach, maybe the two of you have been exposed to. Sometimes these beers can be a little pricier than the macro beers that you find at the grocery store, and it's not that they don't want change, it's that they've been, they've budgeted themselves and they're familiar with it, and people, they stick with what's comfortable and what's familiar versus trying new things. And that's one thing that I find rewarding in what I do, is to see that aha moment as they sample something for the first time that they never thought they would. It's very rewarding.
So, Erica, is that your reader, the craft beer nerd, or are you also exposing the world of beer, not to take Ryan's name away from him, but the beer marketplace to new trends through your writing?
No, definitely we gear more toward a kind of an introductory level. We do have higher level content within it, some of our reviews and things, but we find ourselves, if we talk about Brettanomyces, pretty much we have to define it every single time we use that word, just to ensure that any new readers aren't lost. So we're definitely geared toward kind of the emerging craft beer drinker, and trying to speak to them on a level where they're really, discerning all of the beers that are on the market right now is very difficult. We try to just give them words and touch points that we think will help make them, or help them make better buying decisions.
I think sorry to interrupt. I think one big trend I've been noticing, whether it's at our tour tasting rooms or room, singular, or being out about at tap takeovers or beer events or beer dinners, whatever, is consumers becoming, number one, like much more adventurous. They're interested in the weirder, different styles than they've never had before. I think as well, most consumers now, beer consumers, are definitely looking at quality over quantity for sure. There are definitely still your old school traditional beer drinkers out there that love drinking, 10 beers at a time, which I've been guilty of that. But there's something, I look forward to at the end of my work day is sitting down and having, one great sour beer or one great stout or one, big IPA that is going to satisfy me. It's a big beer, but I'm not putting it down in 25 seconds. I'm actually sitting on it. I'm letting it warm up. I'm letting it open up. I think that's a really cool thing that's happening in the marketplace right now.
And what about food? So, Ryan, you said that for 7 years you guys didn't have food at World of Beer, Isn't that consumer just requiring that this is an all-in experience? I want more savory, more salty, just more flavor profiles in total to pair with my beer?
That's a good point. What we did in the very beginning, opening up in Florida, there wasn't a big craft beer movement at the time. Very soon, the craft beer market exploded to 34 breweries just in the Tampa market alone, including Cigar City, to name one of them. With that, what we did back then was we allowed people to bring their own food in, which actually became almost like your neighborhood tavern where people would have a potluck, evening without being a scheduled event. What ended up happening as we broke into other markets where we didn't have the restaurants in the plaza at their disposal, it became a little tough over time. So we did see a market that we needed to add another element as we grew across the country. And we introduced a tavern fare, 30 menu item gastropub, fresh, never frozen approach, which pairs very well with many, many styles of beer.
And so, Zach, are they asking you for advice when they're in the tasting room or on tours? Or are consumers more interested in how they integrate those flavors with the food?
For sure. Not so much our tasting room. That's pretty much, we don't have food there, so it's focused just on beer. But when it comes to beer dinners, I think beer and food pair beautifully together. I've heard a lot of people say this, and I agree as well. Wine and food pairings, wonderful. I love doing them. They're really complex, and they're challenging. If you're a new consumer, you're new to wine, it is tough to dive into a wine and start picking out oak flavors, chocolate, rose hips, whatever it is. That's deep in there. I think with beer, those flavors, number one, are much more in your face, so they're easier to pair, and they're more exciting and more like a definite pair, if that's the right word. As well, like as the brewer itself, if a brewer is deciding he wants to make a beer to pair with food, he can legitimately, if he wants this beer to pair with a nice dessert, like a nice chocolate dish, he can literally put chocolate into the beer itself and create like the perfect pairing that way. Same thing with cask ales you make, and you can add just about any ingredient to that, whether it's chocolate, cinnamon, vanilla, rose hips, whatever. You can do that to add to pairings. And there's also infusers. I know the World of Beer guys have these. And you can, after a beer's finished, like you have a finished IPA, you can run it through fresh coffee beans or more fresh hops or whatever it is, and you can make the perfect beer pairing. And that chef at that restaurant could infuse his beer for his pairing that night with his own ingredients from his kitchen. It's kind of the perfect beer pairing opportunity. And that's where I think beer shines over wine and a lot of that.
That's very interesting. I've learned a lot just right now, actually. This is very, very interesting. Erica, I have a question for you. I'm not that old, but I'm a little older than I was. And, my grandfather used to drink this one kind of beer. And if you dare to bring anything else in this house, they'll be thrown out the door. Then, your father does the same thing. Then you start drinking whatever you can sneak out of the house when you're not quite ready to drink. So you drink the same thing. And now we are in this phase where, there's no more, I guess there's not as much loyalty anymore to one specific brand. It's like, hey, I'm a craft beer. I want to try all kinds of beers. So where are we heading, and where are we in that cycle of, are we just no longer have loyalty to one specific beer, or is this just a trend that we're going to go back to settle to, this is my go-to beer?
Well, I think you can have your cake and eat it too, or have your beer and eat it too. In this case, I mean, I definitely, and I'm sure everyone on this call has a beer that you drink, your go-to. It's probably in your fridge right now, and I think that's, human nature is to have the things that we love and want them pretty consistently. However, with the amount and the variety, I say whenever I see something new or see something I haven't had before, I definitely will try that menu item or that beer, especially when I'm traveling or or even locally when they put something special on tap. That's the thing I would gravitate toward, is to try something new. And I think that the consumer behavior is probably a great way to go, and also encouraged and should be encouraged within establishments. I mean, let people have a sample or a taster of whatever the new interesting thing is on tap and have that experience. But certainly, I think there is brand loyalty, but there's also a really wonderful time for experimentation.
So I want to ask a question, and Ryan, I'll kick it off with you, because could have been in a different generation, we thought about places where the guys would all go in and order beer, and then the women were stuck with whatever the house Chardonnay was behind the counter. But it appears to me the whole craft beer movement and a lot of the flavors and pairings with food and all of this just opens up that female demographic. And really, just as an example, I certainly would try something that I wouldn't have, 10 years ago because it's a little bit cooler and more appropriate. Are you seeing a lot more of your clientele be the female portion of the human race, or is it still just the man's world?
Women tend to be more of a jet setter group than males ever thought. Not to knock any gender here, but women are, in fact, and I speak to Erica and everybody out there on this, there are a lot of styles that are being produced that are catered to the woman's palate. And the beautiful thing is, women usually speak up more than a guy would on the styles and whether it's, pleasant or not. I have found that we've done over the years actually beer schools that were woman generated, only, where we actually did ladies beer schools within our facilities. As a World of Beer, we do offer other things as well, but it's kind of refreshing to see that the ladies actually indulge in craft beer just as much as the guys do. It's fantastic.
Fully agreed. Yeah, I mean, our tasting room tends to be more women than men a lot of times, which is fun for me. It's fun for everyone there, but it's amazing to see how much it's grown. And I think again, as like what I said earlier, as everyone's palates are changing, men and women included, there's very similar palates. Women aren't just drinking, like you said, like lighter styles, or like if they were drinking the Chardonnay that was behind the bar. I don't see that the case anymore. I have many a times I see, a couple come up, a male, a guy and a girl, they come up. Guy orders Sweetwater Blue, our lightest beer with fresh blueberries. We call it our breakfast beer. It used to be geared as the girls' beer. Totally not the case. Guy will order that, and the girl will order our double IPA. Like, we'll order a Pop Hash, and it's kind of amazing how that's kind of switched. And I can never. I used to be really good at being behind the bar, and I could almost guess what the person they'd come up. I could almost kind of do a quick overlook and guess what they're gonna get, and I was right a lot of the times. These days, if I'm behind the bar, everyone throws me for a loop. I have women that love big imperial stouts and are bored with light beers, and I have men that are exhausted of big, huge beers, and they want something easy drinking all day on a nice hot Atlanta summer. I think it's all over the map. I think you can't pinpoint certain demographics to liking certain beers anymore. I think that's changed.
Erica, you're the female on our panel aside from Robin, so can you vouch for that? Do you validate that as well?
I certainly can, and I have to say that the majority of the draft editorial staff is actually female, and we do all of our tastings together. And in fact, I think all of our go-to styles and favorite beers vary widely within our office. So I don't honestly think it's as much of a gender thing as it is a personal taste, and that women are like men, and that we enjoy certain kinds of beer, variant on the person.
So,
I think a lot of times, I'm not going to lie either, I think women can be more adventurous as far as tasting new things. Sometimes guys are a little stubborn, and they know what they like, and they know they don't want to change it. They want to know what they know. I think women consistently love trying new things, and they're open-minded. I think that's awesome.
I think that is awesome too. That's kind of an interesting, definitely an interesting little factoid. We're going to have to tweet about that and throw it out to the Twitterverse and ask them, who's really driving the bus when you go out for Friday evening happy hour or whatever, in terms of the women going for the stout beer or the men, because it does sound like there have been some amazing changes. So, Zach, just real quickly, because we're about to run up against a break. And in fact, I'm not even going to ask you. We're going to come back and ask. I want everybody to tell us if there was one thing that they could recommend someone do to try to educate themselves about the beer industry. Where would they go? What would they do? Is it tasting? Is it reading? Is it online? We've got some experts this week on the brewery and beer industry. Stay tuned. This is Eric and Robin Gagnon, the Restaurant Brokers. We will continue to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success.